Scary telling. My life ended last Wednesday, the day of my husband's funeral. It was the day I said goodbye to the love of my life and the only person who ever truly understood me. Since then, I've been stuck in a never-ending cycle of grief and despair. The funeral itself was like a waking nightmare. I've never felt so numb as when I watched the coffin lowered into the ground. The coffin that contained Mark. The person who brought so much joy and light into my life was now gone forever. I felt empty and lost, like a part of me had been ripped away. As the days passed, I found myself sinking deeper and deeper into despair. The isolation was suffocating, and every moment felt like an eternity. I longed for the comfort and safety of our home, but now it felt empty and meaningless. I hated being there, surrounded by reminders of everything I had lost. I stopped cleaning, stopped eating, stopped caring about anything except my own misery. It felt like the world had moved on without me, and I was stuck in this never-ending cycle of pain and sadness. I wanted to escape, to run away from everything and everyone, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. And then the visitors started coming. People I barely knew, old friends of Mark, distant relatives. They all offered their condolences and words of comfort, but it all felt hollow and meaningless. I didn't want their pity or their sympathy. I just wanted to be left alone. I tried to ignore them at first, but they just kept coming. They brought food and flowers and other useless gifts, as if that could somehow make up for what I had lost. But it only made me feel more alone and isolated, like I was the only one who truly understood how much Mark meant to me. As the days turned into weeks, the loneliness and despair became unbearable. I longed for the comfort of Mark's embrace, the sound of his voice, the way he always knew how to make me laugh. But he was gone, and I was left with nothing but my own pain. I felt like a corpse, going through the motions of life without really living. What was the point of anything after this? How could I possibly go on without Mark by my side? But I knew I had to keep going, had to keep living even though it felt like there was nothing left to live for. I had to find a way to honor Mark's memory, to keep him alive in my heart even as he was gone from this world. It was a long, difficult journey, but I knew I had to keep moving forward, no matter how hard it might be. Because I knew that somewhere, somehow, Mark was still with me, watching over me and guiding me through the darkness. As the days dragged on, I found myself becoming increasingly isolated and alone. I stopped answering the door when visitors came, preferring to curl up in a ball and hide from the world. But one day, there was a persistent knocking at the door that I couldn't ignore. I peeked through the blinds to see Karen, my mother-in-law, standing on the front porch. I groaned inwardly, knowing that Karen was the last person I wanted to see right now. Despite my reluctance, I opened the door and let her in. She offered me a plate of brownies, and I hesitated before taking one. Karen had always been a difficult person to deal with, and I couldn't help but wonder what she was up to. But as I ate the brownie, I felt a sudden wave of nausea wash over me. I tried to ask Karen what was going on, but she just smiled enigmatically and refused to answer. As the sickness grew worse, I realized that something was seriously wrong. Karen finally revealed that the brownies were laced with a lethal dose of poison. I was shocked and horrified, but Karen just looked pleased with herself. She had planned this all along, she said, as a way to get revenge on me for taking her son away. I tried to run, but Karen blocked my path and refused to let me leave. I was trapped, alone and helpless, with the poison slowly killing me from the inside out. I knew I had to find a way out, but I was weak and disoriented from the effects of the poison. As I stumbled around the house, searching for a way to escape, Karen watched me with cold amusement. She taunted me, saying that she wanted me to suffer before I died, just like she had suffered when Mark was taken away from her. I realized that I was dealing with a dangerous and unstable person and that my life was in grave danger. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't seem to find a way out of this nightmare. The poison continued to take its toll on my body, and I felt weaker and weaker with each passing moment. I knew that time was running out, and that I had to find a way to escape before it was too late. But as I stumbled around the house, my vision growing blurry and my head swimming with dizziness, I knew that my time was almost up. I felt a sense of despair and hopelessness wash over me, knowing that I was about to die alone and helpless, a victim of Karen's twisted revenge plot. As the darkness closed in around me, I felt one last surge of anger and defiance. I refused to let Karen win, refused to let her get away with what she had done. Even in my final moments, I knew that I would fight to the bitter end, no matter what the cost. As the poison continued to spread through my body, I felt my strength ebbing away. The world around me swam in and out of focus, and I struggled to stay upright. Karen watched me with a cold detachment, like a cat playing with a mouse before delivering the final blow. She taunted me with stories of how she had planned this all along, how she had been waiting for the perfect opportunity to get her revenge on me. At first, I tried to fight back, to find a way to escape and get help. But my body was too weak and my mind too clouded to do anything other than stumble around the house in a daze. As the hours ticked by, the poison continued to take its toll. I felt myself slipping away, drifting into a dreamlike state where nothing seemed real or solid anymore. It was a strange and unsettling feeling, like I was trapped in a world that was slowly dissolving around me. I could hear Karen's voice in the distance, taunting me and laughing at my pain, but it all seemed so far away and irrelevant. As I drifted in and out of consciousness, I had a series of strange and vivid hallucinations. I saw Mark's face, smiling at me from the darkness. I saw strange and twisted images of Karen, as if she was morphing into something monstrous and inhuman. At times, I thought I was going to die. But then I would come back to myself, feeling a sudden surge of strength and determination. I refused to give up, refused to let Karen win. It was a grueling and terrifying battle, but I knew that I had to keep fighting, no matter what the cost. Even as the poison ate away at my body and mind, I clung to the hope that I could somehow find a way out of this nightmare. But as the hours turned into days, I knew that my chances of survival were growing slimmer with each passing moment. I was alone, trapped, and slowly dying, and there seemed to be nothing I could do to stop it. In my moments of lucidity, I thought about Mark and all that we had shared together. I thought about the life that we had built and the love that we had shared. And I knew that I couldn't let Karen take that away from me, too. Even as the darkness closed in around me, I felt a sudden surge of defiance. I refused to let Karen win, refused to let her destroy everything that Mark and I had built together. And so, with my last bit of strength, I resolved to keep fighting, to keep struggling against the poison and the darkness, no matter what the cost. Even as I felt myself slipping away, I knew that I would never give up, never surrender to the despair that threatened to consume me. As the days passed, my condition worsened. The poison had taken hold of my body and my mind, leaving me weak and helpless. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, with Karen watching me every moment of the day. At first, I tried to fight back, to find a way to escape and get help. But Karen was too strong, too determined to let me go. She had cut off my phone and internet access, and I was completely cut off from the outside world. I felt like a trapped animal, with no way out and no hope of escape. Karen watched me with cold satisfaction, savoring every moment of my suffering. She told me stories of how she had planned this for years, how she had always resented me for taking her precious son away from her. As the days passed, I realized that Karen was a dangerous and unstable person, capable of anything. She taunted me with stories of how she had killed before, how she had gotten away with murder. I knew that my life was in grave danger, but I was too weak and disoriented to do anything about it. I felt like a ghost, haunting my own home and watching helplessly as Karen tightened her grip on me. As the darkness closed in around me, I had strange and terrifying hallucinations. I saw Mark's face, twisted and contorted into a grotesque mockery of the man I had loved. I saw Karen, morphing into a monstrous figure with sharp claws and glowing eyes. At times, I wondered if I was going insane. The world around me seemed to be dissolving into madness and chaos, leaving me adrift in a sea of confusion and fear. But even as the darkness threatened to consume me, I refused to give up. I clung to the hope that I could somehow find a way out of this nightmare, that I could somehow escape Karen's clutches and find help. But as the days turned into weeks, I realized that my hope was dwindling. I was alone and helpless, trapped in a nightmare that seemed to have no end. And then, one day, Karen came into my room with a wicked smile on her face. She told me that it was almost over, that soon I would be free from the pain and suffering. I realized, with a sickening sense of horror, that she was planning to kill me. I tried to fight back, to plead with her, but it was no use. She was too strong, too determined to let me go. In my final moments, I felt a surge of anger and defiance. I refused to let Karen win, refused to let her destroy everything that Mark and I had built together. And so, with my last breath, I vowed to keep fighting, to keep struggling against the darkness and the pain, no matter what the cost. Even as I felt myself slipping away, I knew that I would never give up, never surrender to the despair that threatened to consume me. As I lay there, gasping for breath and struggling to stay conscious, I realized that my fight was over. Karen had won, and I was just another victim of her twisted revenge plot. But even as I felt myself slipping away, I knew that my death would not be in vain. I knew that Karen would eventually be caught, and that justice would be served. As the darkness closed in around me, I thought about all that I had lost, all that Karen had taken away from me. I thought about Mark and the life that we had shared together. I thought about all the hopes and dreams that we had shared, and how they had been snatched away in an instant. But even in my final moments, I refused to give up. I clung to the hope that my death would bring about change, that it would inspire others to fight against the darkness and the pain. And then, everything went black. I felt my body go limp, my breath growing shallow and ragged. I knew that I was dying, but I was not afraid. As I slipped into unconsciousness, I thought about all that I had been through, all that I had endured. I thought about the strength and resilience that I had shown in the face of unimaginable horror. And I knew that, even in death, I would continue to fight, to struggle against the forces of darkness and pain. I knew that my legacy would live on, that my spirit would continue to inspire others to keep fighting, no matter what the cost. And so, with a final breath, I closed my eyes and surrendered to the darkness. But even as I slipped away, I knew that my fight was not over. I knew that I would continue to struggle, to fight against the pain and the suffering, no matter what the cost.